Thank you everyone for coming to join in the Closing the Gap morning tea. And I congratulate Diabetes Queensland for supporting an event for us. It is a day that is celebrated by many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people around the country, as well as many other people who support the cause to fight for equality for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. I'll just give you a bit of background on the Close the Gap and how it actually started. It resulted from a social justice report back in 2005. The then Social Justice Commissioner, Tom Calma, and I'm not sure if you all know him because he's a big advocate for the Cease Smoking campaign. He had urged the Australian governments to commit to achieving health equality for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people within 25 years. So the non-government agencies actually responded by launching a Close the Gap campaign in 2007. Now, just in terms of the Close the Gap is a term that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people use. The government actually uses Closing the Gap. So you might just see that difference come through the media. The Council of Australian Governments pledged to close key gaps in outcomes for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people and between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. So the Closing the Gap targets are close the life expectancy gap within a generation by 2031. However, the recent December 2017 report from AIHW says that the mortality gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians are actually widening, not narrowing. The second one is halve the gap in mortality rates for Indigenous children under 5 within a decade by 2018. Third one, ensure access to early childhood education for all Indigenous 4-year-olds in remote communities within 5 years by 2013. Halve the gap in reading, writing, numeracy achievements for children within a decade by 2018. Halve the gap for Indigenous students in Year 12 attainment rates by 2020. And the sixth one is halve the gap in employment outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians within a decade by 2018. So what do you think that Close the Gap targets, have they been met? Does anybody here know? Only one. So out of the 6 targets that the government set, the only one that's actually on track is halve the gap for Indigenous students in Year 12 attainment rates. And as a matter of fact, they are doing so much better than the non-Indigenous population. The last 12 months, COAG would review and refresh the Closing the Gap strategy. And that Productivity Commission would be expanded to include an Indigenous Commissioner to lead on the Commission's work of policy evaluation. But there's been no announcement as yet as to who that Indigenous Commissioner might be. Close the Gap leaders would like to maintain the current targets, but not are opposed to any new targets. The refresh of targets is yet to engage properly with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders and communities on its development targets. So from a history point of view, you all know that consultation is a very key element to engaging with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the design of policy and programs for their people. So just for the morning tea, in 2017 there were 1,640 national Closing the Gap events similar to this. They celebrated in different ways. And over 16,000 people were part of the events. So the Close the Gap Coalition, together with, it says, 200,000 Australians calling on governments to take real measurable action to achieve Indigenous health equality by 2030. So this is meant to be a reset the Closing the Gap strategy by establishing a tripartite partnership between Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health leaders, the Commonwealth and the state and territory governments to co-design health policies. There is a Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health leadership group, and I have attended a couple of those when I was in Canberra. So they're the group that is being recognised as some key Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders in the country. So they're asking to invest in Indigenous health on a needs basis, and the needs of First Australians are akin to that of older people, as they have a higher incidence of illness and therefore a greater need. But the government only spends 38% more on Indigenous people, even though their needs are 2 to 3 times greater. Fully cost and fund the implementation plan for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Health Plan 2013 and 23. The first Aboriginal Health Plan was developed in 1989. It was called NARS. And since then they've had another one which had an implementation plan, some of which the recommendations and the KPIs in it were never implemented. And so they've only just recently developed this one to 2023, and there's an implementation plan. However, the Indigenous Minister for Health, Assistant Minister for Health, Ken White, has been part of the consultation around the implementation plan in the country, and they have been doing what they call reiterations, part of the health plan. And in the health plan they also have something around diabetes, and you know very well that a national diabetes strategy was developed last year or released last year, and yet there's still no particular national plans around that. That's come out from the National Health Plan. Ensure that the Aboriginal Community Control Health Service, ATSI, are the preferred model for government investment in primary healthcare services for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. There are 144 Aboriginal Community Control Health Services that belong to state affiliates of ATSI in the country. That's only 144, but there are other associated Aboriginal medical services that are out there as well. So, and I don't know that particular number. The difference between both is that the community control sector is governed by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander board members. Commit to provide adequate and long-term financial resources, including strengthening of the Indigenous health force. So I'd just like to say that within Diabetes Queensland, we have developed a skill set which is endorsed by ADA. We've developed another skill set for the certificate for practice and upwards, which is still with the Department of Health. So just recently, the 4 peaks came together in New South Wales to promote, I guess, all the health professionals. So Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander allied health professionals, and there I believe there's over 22 professions. The nurses and the doctors and the health worker and practitioners all came together to promote a career in that. And the National Rural Health Alliance are also part of their advocacy is also to actually increase the Indigenous workforce in rural and remote areas. They also campaign to address some of the critical social issues that impact Indigenous health, and that is poor housing, nutrition, employment and education. So those key social determinants are still way behind. And also meaningful partnerships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities and health services. And I think that through the position of the priority areas that we have, and I think our little unit here, we have increased and engaged our partnership with not only the community control health sector, but a lot of the other mainstream organisations. So you will probably hear around the ridges that the model for comprehensive primary health care is the Aboriginal Community Control Health Services around Australia, because their episodes of health with the people is a culturally appropriate model. However, there is one weak point within it, and it is a follow-up, and that is something that we can contribute to as Diabetes Queensland. So thank you very much for turning up for morning tea this morning.